when you look at the strength of kind of the young players, I guess guys you would consider prospects, or maybe we would consider prospects. Is there a strength of that group when you think of kind of the 20, 21, 22 type players in this organization that you've coached?
Like a common denominator between a bunch of them, so to speak?
Yeah, a group as a whole. And I'm thinking this in context. There have been articles that have come out over the last few months that have talked about the Bruins as having a low-rated, group compared to the rest of the NHL. So I'm curious what you see as far as this group and their strengths.
I think the one thing that comes to mind, and I think we've organizationally tried to tackle this for the last several years, has been a combination of a very competitive player and a heady player. That's obviously has some sort of ability with regards to the speed of the game. He's going to have that ability just to keep up, and I think that as a group we've got that. But what I think stands maybe a bit apart from, I'd like to think, other organizations is we've got a crop of kids that have done pretty well here in Providence that all compete, I think, at the highest level, and can play a style of game that's that mandates they have some intelligence. I think that's obviously something the Bruins take pride in. It starts with Bergie and Marshy and Z and all these guys that have played so many years and had such success, and it's certainly something that we've tried to tackle down here. But as a whole, you run down the list, Study, Freddie, on the back end backs, Zaboral, these guys, they've learned the value of competition, and I think at the same time they play a style of hockey where they've got their head on their shoulders and they're ready to tackle any chance they can.
Thanks, Jay. Joe McDonald, your line's open. Go on ahead.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for doing this. Hope you're well. Just curious, even though that the AHL is canceled for the season, who are the guys that are still in the mix for when the NHL resumes? Who are those guys that will be with the Bruins?
To be honest with you, Joe, I don't think that anyone has a clue, because from what I understand, to give you an exact answer, I don't think we can do it, just because we just don't know the size of the group. But and this is really just my best guess, it's the guys that we always talk about, right? It's the Studnickas, the Fredericks, and then it just matters. If you have five guys, it's Study, it's Freddie, it's Zaboral, it's Vax and Camphor, and then you've got, I'm not even calling Kuhlman in that mix because he was in Boston more. So it's really tough to nail it down. I'd go with those 4 or 5 to start, and then where does it end? It just depends on what the limit is and what they're going to need. And I don't know if anyone can really forecast that, just because of the unknown that is this virus and the environment at which if we're competing in, what happens. I can tell you that there are plenty of candidates, and I think that these guys have shown that, whether it's Sennies and even and then the up and comers with Lauco or Study and all these guys. So there's certainly a lot of guys that we can pick from. I'm sure if it was up to Butch and Don, they'd have the opportunity, or they'd have the ability to pick from any one of them, just because of the fit factor. So to answer your question in a very roundabout way, I would say that you've got your classic guys that I think are pushing down the door, that have played there before, and they're going to be right in the wings waiting for something to happen. And then if and when you need that second wave, I think that's when you get into some of the younger guys, and you go from there. But it's tough. It's obviously very speculative, really, down the line.
Thanks, Jay.
Dan Roach, go on ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Jay, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
Just a quick question of what was the reaction? How disappointing, how tough was it to have the season canceled and not have a shot at the Calder Cup for you, the staff, the players, everybody in the organization?
It was tough. I mean, I think I'd like to start and just say that I fully recognize the situation we're in, really, as with this country and the world, and I by no means is us making a run the Calder Cup's more important than these frontline workers and all that stuff. So I want to make sure I make that clear. But with regards to our season, it was definitely disappointing. It was we were just clicking right at the right time. We had won. I think we had won 12 in a row, and our players, more importantly, our younger guys, were really coming along and kind of just hitting their stride. So certainly disappointing. We had two goalies that were really at the top of the league, which, as we all know, is probably your most important key down the stretch here. And then we were getting scoring from all four lines, and our defense was pretty short up. So we were certainly a team that looked like we could make a run. And unfortunately, this happened, and it is what it is. I think we're just we're hoping that and I know we'll salvage something out of it. The guys have they played 62 games, and they were able to get a lot of minutes, and they had some success. And so we'll build on it one way or another whenever that time comes.
Thanks, Jay. Mike Loftus, your line's open. Go on ahead.
Hi, Jay. Thanks a lot for doing this. Hope you're feeling good.
Feeling good. Thanks.
Kind of go back to Joey Mac's question there. So are you you're not going to play any games now, but I mean, do you need to stay in touch with a group of your Providence Bruins players to, keep them, like, hey, stay ready in case, or have you done some exit interviews? Like what's it been like?
Sorry for cutting you off. We've done exit interviews for everybody. We actually we've got 4 left, but we've done exit interviews really for everyone other than those 4. We'll do the rest tomorrow. We've stayed in contact with guys pretty much throughout, and it's tough, like you said, just because we don't really have a whole lot of really anything to say with regards to planning. But I can tell them, and they know this too, that they still have a responsibility to hone their craft and make sure that they're ready whenever that time is called, because it's going to be called. It's just a matter of when. And they're very aware of that. So we do stay in contact with them. Timmy, our strength coach here, has done a terrific job with that. He keeps up with them really weekly, along with Kevin up in Boston, and so they're very aware of that. And then I think it's something we take pride in. We try our best to have a relationship with our guys, throughout the summers anyway. So we definitely have been in touch with them. Haven't really been able to give them much of a timetable other than just do your best to stay ready and hopefully something happens.
Thanks, Jay. Evan Maranowski, go on ahead. Your line's open.
Jay, thanks for doing this. I'm just wondering, sort of, when it came to Zach Senyshyn's game this year, what did you notice? Did you notice any growth in specific areas, or what were your thoughts on his season?
Yeah, we were very excited for where Zach was going the last, really through that stretch, the last 5-6 weeks. And I think we've talked about Senny quite a bit, and sometimes I think our staff included, you tend to forget how young some of these players are. He's just turning 23. Players develop in different ways and at different timetables, and Senny found a home with Gauntz and Woods. They were really an up and down line that could do a lot of things. They had some speed with Senny and with Woody, and then Gauntz was able to complement them with some heady play, and Senny was starting to score, and He was getting to the dirty areas, and they were a heavy forechecking line. And he was really, for me, he was finding an identity that I think we all, somewhat would speculate that was his identity, being a big guy that can get to get to places quick and obviously get to the front of the net and get those opportunities. He just, it seemed like he was really starting to put it together down the last, like I said, 5 or 6 weeks. So what did I see? I saw speed. I saw a willingness to get to the net. I saw a willingness to be an F1 on the forecheck. And then, with that came some offensive opportunities, and he started to cash in a bit. So, I know it's tough. It's his 3rd year pro, and I think people tend to, and I get it. It's professional hockey, and there's expectation there. But in our mind and in Senny's mind, he's exactly where he is and needs to be, and that's he's starting to really develop. So I think he had a pretty nice stint in Boston. A couple of months before, unfortunately, got injured, but he was getting right back to that place really as we ended. So we're hopeful that it'll continue. It's fascinating to watch. As me personally, as a coach, I've had a great time this year watching some of these year 3 guys, him, Zaboral, and come into their own. And they've really put their time in. It's been something fun for me to watch.
Thanks, Jay. Connor Ryan, your line's open. Go on ahead.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for doing this, and hope you're well. Obviously there's a lot of high character veteran leadership on this roster with guys like Carey, Gauntz, Woods. But were there any younger players that really stood out to you this year in terms of stepping up a little bit more into a role like that, whether it be being a little bit more vocal in the room or just becoming a little bit more comfortable up in the pro ranks?
Senny, to be honest, has always had a likability to him. He's if you don't know him, he's a very likable guy. He's very endearing, and as he matured here, he started to have a little bit more voice in the room. I would also say Cameron Hughes, the 2nd-year guy, but he has just a natural knack to lead, and he started you started to see that. Back in 9 and whether it's a leadership role or whatever, he certainly showed a big leap from year 1 to year 2, just in his maturity and his comfortability of being in the room and really having a bit of a voice, and also just a real presence in there. He's a Finn, and so a lot of Finns, they tend to be a little quiet to start, but he really opened up this year, and you could tell he really embraced the group, and I think they reciprocated, and he had a lot of fun. So I'd say those 3 or 4 guys, I don't know whether it's a leadership thing or more just a more comfortability thing about, being around the room and letting, their enjoyment of the game and of winning games, come through. But I certainly saw that from those guys.
Thanks, Jay. Just a reminder to media, if you no longer have a question, we just ask that you put your hand down. Alternatively, if you have another question, please go ahead and use the raise your hand feature. We'll go next to Emily Benjamin. Emily, your line is open.
Hey, Jay, thanks. I just was interested in some of these guys you mentioned earlier, who might be in that Black Aces category, what you've seen in terms of the development from guys like Studnicka and Frederick this season.
Well, Study, really, for all intents and purposes, he had a terrific year. I mean, a 20-year-old kid jumps right in, plays every real scenario down the stretch. I was really leaning on him and Cameron Hughes as the guys to seal some games out for us. And so his competitiveness, his speed, his hockey sense really shone through, and was able to be very productive on both sides of the puck. And I think he had a terrific year. Trent, Frederick, and I've said it many times, he has so many different attributes that not many have. He's obviously a bigger guy that has a heck of a shot and can get up and down the ice. And then you add the physical component that he has with really confrontation more than anything being a part of his game. he really, I found, grew was able to gain some huge strides in that, especially just with his consistency in, night out of being that guy to play against. It's when you can get to that point, you're relentless, and he certainly showed that, and he's going to continue to improve on that. Vax, like I just said, more of a maturity thing, but always the competitor, but started to really show signs of some offense. I don't know exactly. I think he had 5 this year, but all of them on the rush, and he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable there. And then Zaboral, really very much like Senyshyn, the last 12 games or 15 games became probably our best defenseman overall. His ability to move the puck cleanly is just really, there's not many that can do it at our level. And then he was paired with Didier for most of it. And I think Dids' competitive juices wore off a little bit on Z and kind of ignited a bit. And before you knew it, he was a real force down low. So I think I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but I think that's 4 guys there, that have certainly shown signs and that are definitely on the cusp of getting an opportunity when the time comes in Boston.
Thanks, Jay. We'll have time for a few more. We'll go back to Dan Roach. Go ahead, Dan.
Jay, more just a philosophical question of, we see Tuukka and we see Halak coming back next year. Just how long does it take? Does it take any longer in your mind to develop an NHL caliber type of goaltender, whether it be through college and the AHL now, than it did years ago?
This is not statistically based, but I, for whatever reason, have the number 23, 24 in my head, the age. A lot of that's Mike Dunham, who's our development goalie coach, talks a lot about that, and there is a correlation there. And that's not to say it's for everyone, but the Shesterkin, who's in New York now, he's 24, and he's a rookie, and he was a rookie in our league, but he had played in the Russian league for several years prior to that. I think the same thing with the guy in Washington, Samsonov. Vanacek kind of got to that point. There's certainly something there. I think goaltending in general is obviously by far the toughest position. Therefore, it's going to take you a little bit longer, most of them, to get to that place. And it's just such a combination, right? I mean, we've got Daniel Vladar, who I think is turning 23. He's 6'6", and he's just coming into his body. I mean, and then at the same time, mentally, to handle the ups and downs, really just even in our league, not to mention at the NHL level, it just takes some time. So, I don't know if there's an exact science behind it. I will say that the guys that I've seen kind of come up through the ranks, it's taken them some time, and they get to 22, they get to 23, 24, somewhere around there. You can see they've put the time in, and they're ready for the next step. And so that's my take on it.
Go back to Mike Loftus. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey Jay, I actually got a couple. First of all, where did you land for your quarantine? Are you still around here, or?
Yep, I'm in Providence. I live downtown. I haven't left much. My folks, I had to move my folks for a few days, which was an interesting experiment from New York to Maine. But other than that, I've been here. They've done a terrific job here in Rhode Island with regards to keeping us safe and keeping the hospital safe. So. You try to support the local businesses when you can. Frankly, we've gotten to know some of these people over the years, so I've been hunkered down here.
Okay, and also too, I mean, obviously, a huge part of your job and the reason that the AHL exists is for prospects to develop players. I wondered if you could go back a little bit and tell like what an older guy like say Paul Carey has meant. meant this year, besides the scoring, to work with younger players and, just show up you guys the ropes, I guess.
Yeah, PC, and I don't want to leave out. I'm just going to mention quickly. There was PC, there's Petrovic, there was Camphor, and then there was there's Gauntz and Woods. They what they did was it's really tricky to do at our level is combine the fact that they still want to get better, that they still want to play in the NHL. They obviously had that, and we asked them to never lose that. But at the same time, we're also asking these for them to help out these other guys that eventually might take their job. And so it's a really tricky situation. I think the one thing that PC does so well is he focuses more on the team and the team success more than anything. He kind of lets everything else fall where it may. So, if he's focusing on team success, he wants everyone to get better, so from the guy that's in the stands, for a lot of the games, the 14th forward to the guy who's taking the opening draw and the closing draw, he's making sure that they're on the same page and we're all in it to win it. Sounds a little cliche, but it's certainly something that he's about. And I think that attitude, just kind of grew throughout the room. We were able to create an environment here in Providence that's healthy. It's a healthy competition between PC and Freddie or Steiner or whoever that it might be. And I think they embrace the competition. At the same time, they also want to make sure everyone's doing well, and as a team we're succeeding. So he's instrumental in that, along with some of those other guys, most of those other guys as well, and helping that out.
Thanks, Jay. Our final question is going to come from Matt Porter of the Boston Globe. Go on ahead, Matt.
Jay, just wanted to see if you could go a little bit deeper on Vakanainen's offensive game, how you've seen that develop, and maybe an example of some things that he's doing now that he wasn't doing when you first kind of had him.
Vax has been an interesting subject, just because we got him right away last year, and then we lost him to an injury, and then he went to World Juniors and he played big minutes there. Really, he's a shutdown guy with a little bit of offensive flair, and then he came back to us, and that's where we really started to see him. And right away he showed his ability to get up the ice and skate, and wanted to get in the offense, mostly on the rush. And then that kind of subsided a bit, for his first rookie year. This year, I found him to be significantly more confident on the blue line, in the offensive zone, really activating from the blue line. So, he's not back there pounding pucks per se, but really what he'd be very active on retrievals, any sort of rebounds into the corner. He's able to get down there and then make a play out of that. And then, I think he also has the ability to walk the blue line. So he's a little bit more roll up top, allowing him to get pucks to the net. That was one area in which I saw, some offensive improvement. The other one would be, in fact, enjoying the rush and really getting his shot off this year in the rush. He's actually got a really effective wrist shot, and he was able to beat goalies multiple times coming down on his strong side. Really, for the most part, I think it was over the glove. But certainly, definitely showing signs of some offense to his game, and it comes from his feet. It's always come from his feet, just because of how well he skates. But he wants the puck a little bit more now. And again, like I said about some of these other guys, I mean, he's 21. I think he just turned 21, and it takes a while, for these guys to really come into their own. He's always going to have that defensive aspect to his game. He's always going to be competitive. But I think the offensive stuff is starting to come a bit more naturally to him, and that's just fine with us, obviously, and hopefully it will continue.